This is a summary of a news report in 1919, and we're talking about Hubbard right now. A.M. Hubbard built a device he called an atmospheric power generator. He ran an 18-foot boat, 10 knots an hour, driven a 35 horsepower motor, on Portage Bay in Seattle. When the drive motor was disengaged from the propeller, it ran free at an estimated speed of 3,500 RPM. The coil system used as a power unit was 11 inches in diameter and 14 inches long. According to Hubbard, tests on the coil showed a pulsing current of 280 amps and 125 volts. That's 35 kilowatts of power. He believed the power from this device would last many years. So if you have a look on the left drawing here, you can see the boat he was running with this. And here you can see his transformer here. You can see it's about the same size as the motor. It's providing all the power for this motor. And here you can see the two cables coming out from them, substantial size cables to carry the amperage he needs. And the second cable goes up to the control device. Don't know who's sitting in here. It may be him himself, Hubbard, or it could be his father. Because on the drawing down the bottom here, and I don't know whether you can all see that, that's the side elevation of the boat. There's 3 people in it. This chap sitting in the back, as far as I know, was the chap they were trying to impress to get him to invest in it. This is probably Hubbard himself driving it. Then there's on the article in the newspaper, it said his father went along, so this is probably him sitting up there. This drawing on the right-hand side was taken a year beforehand by the same newspaper, this article. That's in his own workshop. There's his lathe behind and bits and pieces on his bench. And here we see his actual transformer. You can see that's been wired. The outside tube has been wired up. It looks like copper wire to me. And this is a globe over here that was operating. And what Hubbard said, that within a year I'll run a boat on the bay. And he kept his promise, and that's over there. 9 years later, in February 1928, Hubbard and his transformer again made headlines, this time in connection with a fuelless motor, designed and built by Lester J. Hendershot, which Hubbard claimed was also a nuclear power device based on Hubbard's own design. In this interview, Hubbard revealed for the first time that his transformer was powered by radioactive substance. He sold most of his rights of this invention to the Radium Chemical Company of Pittsburgh for just $2,000 American. And it may be assumed that the radioactive substance was indeed radium. But it really doesn't matter. Any alpha or beta radioactive source would have done just as well. I will not go into the Hendershot device, as I've already written a comprehensive book on the subject available from UTech. However, it is interesting to note that Lester Hendershot had an accident. He was put in a wheelchair and kept quiet for many years. In the end, he decided to go public and reveal the details of his generator. So he set up an interview with a journalist. But before that could happen, he died in his garage in April 1961. Supposedly, he committed suicide. As can be seen from the Hubbard's own drawing, his device consists of 10 tubes. A central hollow tube surrounded by 8 smaller tubes radially displaced and parallel to the inner tube. An outer tube, acting also as a container, surrounds the entire device, with all tubes cut to the same length. The rods of nuclear material are packed tightly inside the central tube, around which is wound a copper wire coil, and each of the 8 smaller tubes also have windings. The outer tube also appears to have windings, which are then wrapped in insulating material. Apart from these obvious facts, we know nothing more about the device.
Goodbye, and went on the most important journey of his life. Actually, this was ground zero for the aviation world, because this brave colonel was attempting to cross the Atlantic without stopping from New York to Paris, France. No one trusted him, because at that time it seemed like an unrealistic goal, but still thousands of people gathered to witness the event. Lindberg was confident. He knew that he could do it, and he was sure that he could rely on his airplane. And here we go.
Bidding farewell to his mother, Charles Lindberg climbed aboard the Spirit of St. Louis, the plane he helped design. At 7:52 a.m., Lindberg set off from Roosevelt Field on Long Island, New York. His goal to fly across the Atlantic. Lindberg, dubbed the Lone Eagle, successfully piloted the first solo transatlantic flight, arriving in Paris in 33.5 hours. Returning to the States, Lindberg received a hero's welcome and a Medal of Valor from New York Governor Al Smith. The journey of Charles Lindberg carried him into the annals of aviation history.
33.5 hours later, Lindberg was arriving in Paris after a 4,000-mile flight. He became the first man to successfully cross the Atlantic in a commercial flight without stopping for refueling. A few days later, upon making his arrival to the USA, the first person to hug him was not his mother, nor his wife, and not even the President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge, who had waited for him personally. Lindberg ran into a man who silently watched over the entire operation and secretly made that success possible. With tears in his eyes, he jumped into his arms and said, "Thank you, Lester. I couldn't have done it without you." Lester Hendershot was a backyard inventor that Lindberg trusted and respected more than anybody else. And as you'll discover, he was the brain behind the scenes. It was a huge success for the United States and for Charles Lindberg. But the event had a dirty little secret from the very start of the mission. Only 3 people from their team knew exactly what was going on. Newspapers, television, and mobs didn't need to know what was really going on with Lindbergh's plane and why Lester Hendershot was the key in the entire operation. You see, at first sight, everything seemed normal with the engine. But in a hidden compartment, they put Hendershot's secret invention, a generator that could run without fuel for thousands of hours and give an additional amount of energy that Lindbergh's airplane would need to cross the 4,000 miles of the Atlantic without stopping. They wanted to keep it a secret, but somehow a technician who helped them with the project leaked this information to a local newspaper. Does that sound too good to be true? Well, the newspaper couldn't believe it either. It makes a lot of sense today. The aviation sciences were in their infancy, and official documents show that Lindbergh's airplane, the Spirit of St. Louis, weighed about 2,060 pounds. You've got to understand that airplanes of that time were not the technical masterpieces of today. Their engines were big and noisy, and they were gobbling up kerosene like a fat kid in a candy store. In fact, that's the reason why everyone and their mother were screaming, "Crossing the Atlantic is nothing more than a pipe dream." There is no way that it would have crossed 4,000 miles over the Atlantic without an ace up the sleeve. And that was Hendershot's invention, a phenomenal generator that could produce endless energy, feeding itself from the Earth's magnetic core. As an example, a small airplane today, similar to Lindbergh's, has an average consumption of 6 miles per gallon. Simple math tells us that the Spirit of St. Louis would have needed roughly 670 gallons to make 4,000 miles without stopping. The entire weight of the airplane was 2,060 pounds. So you do the math, and you'll see that it would have been impossible. Most people didn't care about the nitty-gritty details. They just wanted the record. And thanks to the miracle generator, Lindbergh managed to achieve it. The newspapers were happy. The politicians were happy. It was like magic. But who was the...
It is one of the most haunting crimes in American history. The daring kidnapping and tragic death of Charles Lindbergh Jr., the precious son of America's then greatest hero. One man, Bruno Richard Hauptmann, was arrested, tried, and executed.
The baby was put to sleep up there in that bedroom, and the rest of the household was awake when he was abducted.
The crime would touch a fear lurking in the heart of every parent, that somehow, without warning or reason, their child would be taken from them, never to return. With his triumphal solo flight across the Atlantic in 1927, Charles Augustus Lindbergh instantly became a global icon.
Charles Lindbergh was the hero of the world, not just of the United States. He seemed to personify the best of an American. Young, informal, very handsome, tall, blue-eyed, and a bit shy. He's irresistible to the world at that moment.
As this 1927 hit song clearly demonstrates.
Lindbergh, oh why what a flying fool was he. Lindberg, his name will live in history. Over the ocean he flew all
When Lucky Lindy met heiress Anne Morrow, he not only taught her how to fly, he married her. And when the celebrity couple had their first child, a boy they called Charlie, their charmed lives seemed complete. But their joy lasts less than 2 years.
A message that shocked the world comes in on the police teletype.
When the Lindberg baby is reported missing, this country is in a state of shock. There's a sense of disbelief that this extraordinary royal prince, really, would have been stolen.
The crime was committed by means of a ladder placed against the house.
With no eyewitnesses and few clues other than a homemade ladder left by the kidnappers, the police had a difficult time reconstructing the events of the crime. What emerged as facts were these. Sometime between 8 and 10 p.m. on Tuesday, March 1st, 1932, one or more individuals came to the house with a homemade folding ladder that left scrape marks on the wall to the right of the baby's bedroom window. The kidnappers apparently climbed the ladder and entered the room through the unlocked window. Once inside, they snatched the sleeping baby from his crib. They may have silenced him or rendered him unconscious, because no one in the household reported hearing Charlie cry out or struggle. As he was taken from his bedroom and whisked away. The kidnappers left the ladder by a service road and used a car to make their getaway. They had placed a ransom note on the baby's windowsill demanding $50,000 for his safe return, and warned Lindberg there would be trouble if he involved the police. The criminals left no fingerprints or other helpful forensic evidence to guide the investigation. At a late-night meeting in a Bronx cemetery, the kidnappers did collect the ransom and did get away scot-free. Dr. John Condon, Lindbergh's emissary, handed over the $50,000 in a wooden box in exchange for a note telling Lindberg where he could find his baby. But it was all a ruse. 2 weeks later, a truck driver walking in the woods stumbled upon Charlie's decomposing body, not 5 miles from his Hopewell home. And from the state of the corpse, it appeared he died the very night of the kidnapping. An entire nation mourned Charlie's death as if this child was their very own. It took the police 2.5 years to finally corral a suspect through a combination of foresight and luck. When police went to the home of Bruno Richard Hauptmann, a German immigrant carpenter living in the Bronx, they found $14,000 of the ransom money, a small handgun, and other suspicious evidence. They arrested him on the spot.
Thousands stormed the venerable court at Flemington, New Jersey.
The biggest trial ever seen in America began in Flemington, New Jersey on January 3rd, 1935. Thousands of reporters and onlookers descended on the small town, all scrambling for a front row seat. At the trial, Hauptmann presented himself as an innocent working man who would never commit such a crime. It took 6 weeks of grueling testimony. But on February 13th, 1935, the jury handed down its verdict. Guilty as charged, with a sentence of death.